You are now listening to the NerdWords Podcast, brought to you by UtilityMuffinLabs.com. If you know your party's extension, please dial it now. Press 1 for customer service. Press 2 for podcasts. Press 3 to check on an order. Press 4 to eat at Manhattan.
Welcome to another episode of the NerdWords Podcast. I'm Nathan.
And I am Rachel.
And today it's me and Rachel doing the podcast because basically, for those of you that listen to the vampire podcast that we do, our man Bob had some health issues, and so he's recovering quite nicely. But we've decided to allow him to use his holiday time to recover from this illness. Mm-hmm. So just me and Rachel, and we're going to be talking about some.
Not that it couldn't be just you and me normally.
Yeah,
Bob can take off anytime he wants, and
it's true. It's true.
I'm no Bob's substitute, is what I'm saying. I am my own person.
Yes, but not every everybody needs some time to get well.
Yep.
So, anyways, today we're I guess going to be talking about our exploits playing Vampire the Masquerade and doing the LARP thing.
Yeah, so we went to LARP. We went to LARP this past weekend, and we had a really good time.
Yeah.
Actually, it was fantastic. There were so many people that were new that started when you started that I guess the storytellers thought that it made really good plot sense to have a bit of the Templars sort of being in charge of making sure that all the new people joined packs or formed packs so that there were no stray folks, and it was a way to consolidate power in the city. But there were some issues at the end, and essentially the Archbishop came in and said, all right, so the diocese has two Templars, two bishops, and basically the Archbishop came in and said, so-and-so is no longer a bishop, and their Templars are no longer Templars, because I say so. And it will be up to all of you at our next gathering to select a new bishop. And my character is currently a Templar.
Yeah.
And not one of the ones that got demoted. Or I guess
dismissed.
Dismissed as Templar. So my character is still a Templar. And she is also on Path of Power in the Inner Voice.
Yeah.
She's a unifier. So what that means is that her path of is not humanity, but it is something else. It's an alternate path. And basically when you play other paths, you're not just role-playing your character, but you kind of have to role-play that path first, because that really, really informs your character. And so because she is of that particular path, it kind of makes sense for her that this would be something that she would want. She would want to be elected bishop. Yeah. And normally, the Archbishop appoints bishops, but the Archbishop has decreed that they will not be, I'm really sorry, that is really distracting to me. I'm sorry.
Is it just that it's lighting up that's distracting?
It's lighting up and it's beeping. I'm sorry. Can you put it down?
It's actually not the phone that's beeping. It's something else in the other room that's beeping.
Oh, it's not the beeping. It's the fact that it keeps lighting up. I'm really sorry, but I can't keep concentrating when it shows.
That's okay.
I don't even remember what I was saying.
So you were talking about your path. So I'll just recap, since we got kind of distracted by my phone that's getting blown up on the same game.
Oh, it's the same game.
So yeah, it's all people, because one of the side effects of game that we went to on Saturday was we were kind of some of us were forced into a pack. Mm-hmm. So anyways, you were talking about how the Archbishop kind of came in and said,
right.
This is what's going to happen.
Right. So the Archbishop comes in and says, I am refusing to appoint another bishop. This city has trouble with unity, as it was seen tonight. And, actually it was pretty good. It was a pretty good outcome.
Yeah, which I didn't really feel like.
Yeah, there was other stuff going on that we didn't know about, right? Because we're not storytellers. We're not privy to the whole thing of everything that went on. I think a whole pack got taken away and got a talking to. Remember that? There was a group of people that were just went off with the bishop. There was a whole other scene that happened that I wasn't privy to.
I don't think I saw that, because we were, my perspective, I was stuck in a room.
Yeah.
Like from basically the beginning of game up until like basically I spent the entire night in one room and then did a Vauldery ritual in another room, and that's basically what my game was.
Yeah, which, I mean, to be fair, it was pretty interesting scenes going on in that room, though. It's not like you were stuck there and you were bored.
Oh yeah,
right?
yeah, no, yeah. It was a good kind of stuck, not a bad kind of stuck.
Right. So, but Nathan and the other new players formed one pack, and it happened really, really like masterfully how everything went down, and it was really good. And if they hadn't formed a pack, or at least a couple packs that night, they would have been assigned to packs. Or also the alternative was that you could be recruited by pre-existing packs or asked to join pre-existing packs, and a couple people did go that route. Yeah. Anyway, the point of it is, at the end of the night, the archbishop was like, "I'm not going to select the next bishop. Everybody else in this diocese is going to select the bishop, and it will have to be a unanimous vote for who the next bishop is. And if you guys cannot decide by the end of our next gathering, there will be consequences." And so my character, being on Path of Power and the Inner Voice, so my character kind of has to go after the bishop role. It's going to be somewhat imperative to her path that she at least somewhat pursue it, right?
Yeah.
And so I figured Nathan, being an expert player and being like a Sabbat player, he would be a good person to recommend some tips and tricks. So I had some questions I wanted to pick your brain about that would probably also be maybe informative to some people who play the game.
So for me, from my perspective, I'm playing. So first of all, let me give you a little bit of background, because I like that you give me the nod of sort of an expert player, but I feel like the truth of the matter is, I'm an expert sort of tabletop player, so I know sort of like what is in canon, and I would say for the most part I know the intricacies of that. Let's hope, with all the podcasts I've done. But what I'm not super knowledgeable about is the One World by Night canon, right? Because it's an organization that's been running for many, many years. For a lot of years, over a decade, probably someone will know the exact number, but 15 to 20 years for sure. And there's been a ton of things that have informed that game. And, as far as I know, there's never been like any resets. And so what I know is I know like the base layer, right? But I don't know any of the bricks and moving parts that like inform it, but I'm trying to learn. I'm like reading the material that's available, and one thing that I've learned, and you may have learned this too, is that One World by Night, at least their Sabbat, the sect of the Sabbat, is very like sub-sect driven. It's very like faction driven, right? That's probably the most appropriate word. So I'm learning that not only are most Sabbat games, or most vampire games, are very clan forward, where they're like, I'm a Bruja, I'm an Assamite, I'm a this, I'm a that. This game is also very faction forward. So,
right.
The loyalists and the
status
quo and the ultra conservatives. And so as a Sabbat player, I've always understood these factions exist, but to me, they've been like the way that I've always ran Sabbat, the way that I've always played Sabbat is that they're like, they're very nebulous. They're not like necessarily groups that you would pledge a membership to, right? But in this game, like those like factions are almost like clubs, right? They're almost like sororities and it's like being like a stonemason, right? It's very much faction forward,
right? So not only do you have the layer of clan loyalty and loyalty to your pack and loyalty potentially to people who you've done the Vauldery with, but then you also have faction loyalty.
Yeah.
So there may be people in other packs that are of the same faction as you that you may be working on. So it's very it gets very intricate into political machinations, and
it's super multi-layered.
It's very multi-layered, and because of that, I'm still finding that out. Like I'm still kind of discovering. I feel like I've only scratched the surface, and there are a lot of different layers to it. But all of that being said, you can still play the game and know nothing.
Yeah.
Like a lot of the person who became Ductus of your pack which, is a relatively important position, is a relatively new player, like I was a few years ago. So I have some questions for you.
Yeah, of course.
So real quick, just go over, typically, what would be the steps or the path or the career path, if you will, of someone who eventually becomes a bishop? I'm assuming that there's a theme.
Well,
someone doesn't just become a shovelhead one day and then the next day they're a bishop.
No, not in that frame of mind.
And I guess what is a bishop?
A bishop is kind of so you have it's the Sabbat is based off of the Catholic Church,
right?
The hierarchy. Mm-hmm. So you have a diocese, and even that was kind of like a weird thing. I never heard anybody express that term in a game sense, but I was like, well, that makes sense. I just never heard it called.
So the diocese is like a region or a territory.
Yeah, it's like a town or a city, like a place, that's under Sabbat control. And I think that the reason why I never really heard that was, truth be told, most LARPing that we've ever done was done Camarilla. There were very few Sabbat games that would last very long. And the problem with that is I've often encountered that most Sabbat games end up being very Camarilla-esque. Like when you go and you play one, people tend to walk on eggshells because the Sabbat holds this kind of I don't have humanity. I don't give a fuck. I'm willing to throw down at any time. And because of that, I have found in my experience exclusively that people tend to be more politically maneuvering and less bikers throwing bottles in the alley around the campfire.
Right. In Sabbat games.
Right, in Sabbat games. And my concept, what I understand of the Sabbat is very much the brutal rundown post industrial revolution city, in the Rust Belt, where the Sabbat is just kind of they rule the night, like a little bit of Lost Boys and a little bit of Near Dark. And usually the games that I played in were nomadic, right?
Right.
Sabbat was important when you went to a Sabbat city, but outside of that, it was pack, right? It's all pack. So, it's a different experience playing with 15 or 20 people than it is playing with 5 people in a nomadic Sabbat game.
Right.
So that's my default response. But there really isn't a career path to bishop. Usually,
so real quick, the hierarchy is each diocese has an archbishop.
Not always.
Okay, well,
we'll say for a good explanation, for a good rundown, yes, your archbishop is going to be a spiritual leader for a region, for Indianapolis or for
the Midwest,
Montreal, right? And then usually your bishops are going to be a more localized, and they sort of rule by committee.
Okay,
right, and when you say rule, it's hard to put that into perspective when you're talking about the Sabbat, right? Because you don't ever really rule the Sabbat. But these are individuals that are of a spiritual authority. Because remember, the Sabbat at its core, it's all about spirituality. It's about getting past the hang-ups of being a mortal and being a true vampire, right? Being a true Cainite.
Right.
So the bishops are more supposed to be spiritual advisors, but also you can't get to a position of authority in the Sabbat without being able to swing a little.
Right.
So there's that. Bishop is going to be your first real position of authority within the Sabbat.
Right.
Outside of the ultra miniature, the ultra focused ductus of a pack. In the way that the Sabbat is presented, at least before V5, most true Sabbat, their highest political aspirations will ever be, their highest level of attainment politically will ever be to ductus. That's it.
Okay, and what is ductus?
Your ductus is the de facto martial leader of a pack, right?
Right. So you've got your
it's
pack.
It's like your alpha.
Right. Your pack has your martial leader, the person calling the shots. That's the ductus. Each pack will also have a priest who's responsible for the sort of spiritual guidance of the pack members, sometimes helping them on their path.
And truth be told, your priest is actually more important than your ductus. because like every role that you have within the Sabbat is essentially just like a priest that's gotten better or more efficient or knows more about their job.
Okay,
right?
so let me ask you this. Do you think that being a priest of a pack is essential, or is it just helpful in being a bishop as far as the duties of a bishop?
I think it's helpful. I don't think it's essential, but I think that if you look at the way that the Sabbat is laid out, it's like, again, it's like a connection between, it's like a dark reflection of the Catholic Church, right?
Right.
So basically, you're always going to start off as like a priest, right? The priest is going to be like your street level spiritual guide.
Right. So they do all of the rituals, the rite. They kind of help their pack mates, like on whatever their morality paths are.
And again, this is just my perspective on it. This is like kind of how I see it, but
this is essentially how it works in the game, right? In the game in general, broadly speaking, not necessarily Obi-Wan. Obi-Wan is Obi-Wan, right?
And essentially every position that you go up beyond that, you're either like an advisor or some sort of spiritual guide, but also you have more responsibilities.
So what differentiates like a priest from a Templar? I know a Templar is appointed by a bishop, but as far as like going a little bit into that for people who may not know.
So a Templar is completely different than a priest, right? Your Templars can be picked and assigned for any particular reason by, bishops, archbishops. Sometimes they're assigned for protection. Sometimes they're assigned for punishment.
Why would someone be assigned as a Templar as punishment?
Well, so it's the same concept as, like, why would a sheriff ever be put in that position as a punishment? Think of someone who is a habitual line stepper, right? Like someone who's constantly overstepping their bounds, and now they're assigned as like the shadow to the bishop or the shadow to the archbishop. And so let's say they're a badass, right? They're just like a physical powerhouse, or they're really important. Something about them makes them valuable, but something about them is like causing great consternation for the authorities above them.
Right.
Like a rabble rouser.
Okay.
Someone that's like a loyalist that, is basically turning the diocese against sort of, the bishopric or, the local authority. The local authority is having a problem with hunters.
Right.
And there's this rabble rousing loyalist who isn't wrong, but is like causing issues that the bishop's like, I want to whack this dude. I want to take the individual out, but I can't. They're of value.
Right.
So instead, I'm going to, because remember, this is all politics, right? Right. The Sabbat, like the Camarilla, it's all about politics. It's all about, making moves and maneuvers that give other individuals the impression of things that you're doing. And it's, so it's like chess. But think of it as this, for instance, like, I'm going to take this loyalist rabble rouser and I'm going to assign them to my retinue. And now, essentially, that individual has to do everything I tell them.
Right.
And if I tell them, I want you here by my side to protect me, to protect my interests, that's what they're going to do. And if they fail, now the bishop can be like, see, this individual is worthless. But also, hopefully, they can mold that valuable individual, that loyalist rabble rouser, maybe to see their perspective. Maybe, if that loyalist is on the inside of authority and sees why the bishop or the archbishop or whoever makes the decisions that they make, maybe it'll change the loyalist's mind and change their mindset, right? So there's all kinds of things that you can get out of this. So I would say, if you crack a Sabbat book and you go, what is the course from, shovelhead, recently embraced, to true Sabbat, to bishop?
Right.
There isn't a path, right?
Okay.
Basically, your goal as a, newly recruited shovelhead, converted, and now you're true Sabbat, you're day one, game start, you're true Sabbat.
Right.
Your goal is to frickin' stay alive, right? The majority of your Sabbat are going to end up as fodder. They're going to end up fighting elders or Camarilla or killed by werewolves or destroyed by hunters or whatever. So if you can get past those first nights and become, true Sabbat of value to where you're actually of value within the sect, that's how you're going to start to play to those roles of being important. Now, most probably don't have political aspirations towards being a bishop or something of that nature.
That's a great point. So what would talk a little bit about Path of Power and the Inner Voice and why that would incline an individual to seek a role like bishop?
Well, so I think that without, going overly long-winded about the path,
you can learn more about the path and hear Nate and Bob go overly long-winded about it on the if you're a Patreon supporter.
We did like probably like an hour-long podcast on this path, and all of our perspectives pretty much come from like a tabletop perspective because. LARP, it's awesome. I love LARPing. But what you're going to find the more that you do it is that it's going to be a little bit different everywhere you go. Right? Everybody's going to have a different perspective on it. But
essentially, what is the path and how would you say that it is like would motivate someone to seek a leadership position like bishop?
Well, I think that if I can remember correctly, the power and inner voice, I think that it's kind of all in the name, right?
Right.
Like your inner voice is guiding you towards like. Tell me like your perspective from your character, right? Like when someone walks up to you and they're like, "Hey, I need something." Your first goal is what? Like, what is your first inclination? I'm Corey. I'm the guy that just came in from out of town. And I'm like, hey, I need to talk to the bishop. Your first inclination is to go, okay, what can you do for me?
Exactly. Or what can I get out of you?
Right.
Or how can I manipulate you in the future by doing this favor for you?
Right.
Yeah.
Now this is a very, I think, very basic rundown of what this path is. But your character essentially is kind of ingrained that you're the only one of worth that can fill this position.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And that's because, this position is a stepping stone to something else. But I would say...
Not only that, but I feel like with the path, it's when the opportunity arises to take power, you have to take that power.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but there is a tenet within your path that also like espouses the respect of power.
The respect of power. So you respect those who are in authority above you, who demonstrate that they are worth that respect.
Now also, like I said, we're kind of like going back and forth, but like, One World by Night uses like the classic revised edition live action rules for paths and abilities and all that stuff. So
Laws of the Night,
right? And a lot of people out there listening probably use like the By Night Studios version. That's not a version I've ever played. I don't know.
I don't know it either.
I know nothing about that, just because there's no games around here to play in them. So I think perspective wise, we'll keep it within the 5 dot path in that regard. But so from what I remember of the path, you deeply espouse.
Wait a minute, Nathan. You don't have everything about this game memorized?
How could I?
How dare you?
How could I?
I think that's funny though, because a lot of people are like, think that people who've been playing the game forever have every word memorized ever, and that's just not the case. Like you're very knowledgeable, you know a lot. You have a lot of muscle memory, and you've thrown tons of chops, but that's why there's books to reference.
So the thing of it is, like, I remember every, I know how to build the house because I have the frame memorized, right? But when we do these podcasts, especially, like, you would think that doing, like, the vampire podcast would help make things clearer or make memory recall easier. It actually makes it more difficult.
Because it's just such a large quantity of information.
Right, because what's happening is, like, over the course of the 20 years or whatever I've been playing this game, I've read books and sort of I read them in the natural rate that they came out, and so when updates happened, you're kind of like replacing old memories, right? You're just
Right.
like you're like laying over, and so over time you kind of remember things. Well, now over the course of 2 years, I've read 95 books, and so
hard to keep them straight.
Yeah, like when you read a book a week, plus like, not only am I reading like your core books, but then we got to go to LARP.
Yeah,
and I got to go. Oh shit! What was this? Because like now you just have like rules, just jumbled. So
Yeah.
you forget stuff. Like
Right.
you forget was Path plus even more reading the One World by Night errata and all of their stuff. Like the faction book I have is like 160-page PDF.
Yeah.
So I got to read that stuff too, because I got to know that world.
You can as you want to.
Yeah,
You say
but
you
I
gotta,
gotta.
but I just don't want anyone who's listening to feel like
No.
it's an insurmountable like mountain. You know what I mean?
Nate's gotta.
Yeah, Nate is a bit obsessive once he gets going.
It's not. You don't have to because I
I never have. I haven't read the whole thing.
Well, and I asked you. I was like, and we're kind of all over the place, but that's okay. It's conversational.
Who cares?
But I was like, what's up with this Montreal Accord? And you were like, what?
What?
Yeah, and I was like,
you mean like the Milan? What are you talking about?
and I'm like, no, this Montreal Accord, which is there was, from what I understand, in One World by Night, there was another civil war. And so this accord was signed in 2015 to bring an end to that infighting.
Was it 12 or 15? It was.
I think it was 2015, but
it was somewhere in the teens.
That's not
Doesn't
important.
matter.
Right. It was this century.
So he's like, you might want to read this Montreal Accord if you are wanting to be bishop. And I was like, yeah, I mean, it's probably a good idea.
Well, and the reason why I said that was because I feel like I'm a good enough player and I'm well versed enough to spit some Sabbat
Lore.
lingo when I'm role playing. But do you remember the previous game session? Everybody's like standing around that campfire or like the pit. I don't think there was a fire at the time, but and I was kind of like going in on my character's personal opinions about things, and other people are kind of like, but like there's a thing that like kind of we don't think that way anymore, and I was like, I don't care, but that's because I have to like in the moment I have to maneuver, that's how you do this role playing ish.
Right.
You maneuver in the moment, right? It's like always saying yes, but
you gotta pivot.
Right. So I'm just kind of rolling with the punches to continue the role play, and I get home and I'm looking through and I'm like, there's a lot of stuff that if I wanted to get deeply involved here, I could get deeply involved.
Yeah, and there are people who do.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's cool because it appeals to people that want to do that, but if you don't want to, the point is, if you don't want to and you want to like sort of organically learn and you're good at being able to maneuver socially, that's fine.
So that's what I feel like I've done. And I'm not saying I'm good at maneuvering socially or I'm a good role player. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying I've just tried to learn organically. So Path of Power and the Inner Voice, kind of the thinking being that if you see an opportunity to take power, you kind of have to take it, right? That's part of pursuing your path.
Yeah.
So when this came up and the Archbishop announced it, I was like, okay, well, I guess this is something I need to strongly consider for next game. The problem is that there are 2 appointed bishops in the city. One of them was just, removed. The other bishop is my bishop. I'm the Templar to this bishop, and they're the priest of my pack. So I'm kind of in an awkward position where I'm like, well, how could this even work? So I don't know if people that we game with will listen to this podcast. Perhaps some of them will. So I don't really care about revealing strategy or whatever. People can metagame. I don't really care. But I thought it would be fun. Like, what are some recommendations you might have on how I could think about doing this? Like, what are some steps I could take? Because I have some ideas. Having conversations with people in downtimes throughout the month is one, sort of starting to campaign for myself without actually campaigning for myself.
Yeah. Well, and that's, I think, the one thing that you have to decide is, do you want to go full force in and like sort of declare yourself as like the prime,
right,
individual for the position, or do you want to sort of manipulate your way into the campaign?
Yeah.
It's do you get someone to push you forward, even though you wanted it, or do you step forward on your own, right? And I think that that's really the key. And
so, which strategy in the past? I'm sure you've been in similar situations in games where your character wanted to be advanced or was trying to move up to the next position. Those are two strategies, right?
Yeah.
I mean, maybe there are others, but of those two, which have you found to be the most helpful, right? To kind of put your throw your name in the ring and say, "I want this," or to kind of,
So here's the thing of it. What I have found in almost all circumstances, at least with role playing is concerned, when I step forward and I assert myself as being, I am the best for this job. I should be in this position. Here's my accolades. In almost every circumstance, there will be opposition.
Yeah.
And there will be opposition that is unwilling to step out of the way.
right.
And even let's go back to Gary Con, right? As Prince, there were things I was saying to people that if had been said to me, I would have been like, why am I even in opposition to this guy? Like, he speaks complete sense. But the thing was, I'm a prince arguing for my position of power.
Right.
And it's written into people's characters that they're in opposition. And so those people, to their credit, they're trying to play it to the hilt, but at the expense of the logic of,
Right.
and this is actually something that I experienced in the most recent game as well.
Okay.
Whereas everyone was like, you should be a Ductus.
Was saying it to you.
Right, you should be Ductus. And I went, I'm Ductus. And I made this decision. I said, what I'm going to do is I'm going to declare myself Ductus of a pack. And I'm going to do that until someone can give me a reasonable argument as to why they should be over me. Until then, anybody that wavers or doesn't have like backbone of conviction, I'm going to stand in opposition to. So here I am with this collective.
And what was the motivation behind doing that? Was that just your character, you playing your character's mentality, or was were you trying to?
So it's a little bit in, a little bit out. So in the in-game sense, my character wants whoever's going to be like. The character doesn't want to be Ductus. The character's a spiritualist, right? And an assassin and a soldier.
Right.
So I like the character doesn't want to be in charge of the pack. And the character, the way that I presented, like, here's my reasoning for why I should be Ductus, I felt were all terrible. Like, I'm going to take you all into danger and get you killed.
Right.
This is what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
And that's, I'm trying to present that because what the goals of my character are different than leadership. I don't actually want to be in charge. I wouldn't mind being a priest and helping to guide the rest of the pack spiritually towards my beliefs. But basically, the path that I'm on and that informs my role play, guides me to be as Cain.
Right, and that's the path of Cain.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, to me, I'm going to respect, the most powerful predator, the individual maybe that has a passion for leadership that could use some guiding towards finding their own greatness.
Right.
But I don't necessarily want to be in that. But unless you can give me a reason, I'm not going to stand by and let you lead me.
Okay.
Out of game, you get to a point where you've been doing this for such a long time that when you speak with any kind of knowledge, people automatically want to put you in positions of power, right? Because they're like, well, here's a person who knows what they're doing.
Right.
This player knows what they're doing, or this player has a really good idea of conceptually what the game is going for. So I want to put them in a position of power. That's cool, but the thing is, as someone who's been doing this for so long, I have that storyteller mindset where I want to see people who haven't gotten to explore those roles, get into those roles instead of being overshadowed by someone who's done it a dozen times.
Yeah, you don't want to be the star of the LARP.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm at the point now where I've been doing this so long, like I want to take a step back.
It's more fun for you to watch new role players develop.
I want them to be as excited as I was at 17 or 18 years old, getting into this game and exploring it and learning and getting to play those positions, getting to go through struggles, have enemies. I'd rather be the type that sort of just stands in the background and chills.
So it's really funny that you bring this up, and I told you this in the car, but I think it's kind of fun to mention. This is, if no one's done this in LARP, no one's LARP before. I mean, it's really fun to have these conversations and these dialogues and do this maneuvering. I mean, like, Vampire, in my opinion, there's an evil element to it. There's a supernatural element to it. But more than anything, I mean, this is just, what was that show that had Kevin Spacey in it that was on Netflix?
House of Cards.
This is just House of Cards.
Yeah,
essentially, this is House of Cards in a lot of ways.
When House of Cards came out before, obviously we found out all the fun stuff about Kevin Spacey.
I
used
we can't
fun
we can't defend that at all. Yeah,
in the not fun, in the sarcastically fun. It's definitely like House of Cards. Is something I would tell somebody like, hey, if you want to know more about this game, watch that. To me, this game, in a modern context, we have House of Cards and like Game of Thrones.
Yeah, Game of Thrones is another one. Yeah,
it's very like you get the game and you interact with individuals, and like somebody could have been working on some plot for months that you don't know about, and they're like just gunning to end your existence from some slight you gave them that you didn't even think about, 6 game sessions ago. Right. So it's like, or it could just be like, we're going to go out and we're going to play in traffic. It can be any of those things.
Or both. Some packs will do one and some packs will do the other on a given LARP. But anyway, it was kind of cool because you mentioned how your character, Nathan, and your character, Corey, didn't want to be Ductus of the pack, but you kind of had a plan to see, well, either I'll be Ductus or, I'll say this, I'll do this, and hopefully someone will step up and be able to prove that they would be a better Ductus than me. And so there was a relatively new player who was, had asked my character last game session, like, hey, I'm interested in being on Path of Power and the Inner Voice. Could you potentially mentor me? And I was like, of course. So we, and as Templar, part of my job that evening was to monitor the room, help facilitate the discussion as far as forming people into packs, and then also to keep the bishop informed of progress, right? Like, that was kind of my job. And then so I was like, excuse me, everybody, like, there was a lot of, like, people going back and forth about, like, I would be the best Ductus. No, I would be. You wouldn't be because of this, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, I think we need to just, have a 5-10 minute break, have one-off conversations on your own, and then we'll come back together in about 15 minutes. And I took this girl.
You created a break session to go like do some political machinations.
Yeah, basically.
I'm like sitting there and I'm like just rolling my eyes and I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
I'm just going to sit here. I have like my political machinations are as deep as I'm Ductus.
Yeah. Nathan Ductus. Oh.
Me like Cain.
Me like Cain. Yeah. But I took her aside and I was like, listen, you're not going to convince him that you're a good Ductus by arguing with him. I was like, you need to appeal to his ego. And I was like, because I didn't have any idea that what your strategy was. And I was like, you need to appeal to his ego. I was like, you should make the argument that if he pursues this line of thinking as him being Ductus, then he's no longer going to have the freedom to pursue his path the way that he needs to. And also, he would be a better warrior. And I was kind of giving her all these tips. And I was like, this is how you manipulate him. Stop suggesting that you would be a better Ductus because of X, Y, and Z. But talk to him about how him not being Ductus liberates him to do all the things that he has in mind. And then I out of character, I'd like held my hand over my heart. And I was like, also, Nate's been playing this game forever. I have no idea what he's going for here. But I think that this is like a good way to go about it. And she's like, okay. And then, cause she really wanted to be Ductus.
Right.
And she would, she's going to be great at it. Like, she's going to role play the character really well. So I have no idea what she said to you, but I feel like and also my character really wants her character in a position of leadership in this newly formed pack.
Right.
Because my character is mentoring her.
Well, and then
so I have no idea if like what I kind of advised her to do gave you an easy out, but it all worked out swimmingly for me.
In a way it did. So basically, about 10 minutes before that, I had said, if someone has an argument that they want to, give to me, to tell me how they would use my abilities, I'm willing to listen to it. And so it was her and it was another individual in our pack. And he's playing a Serpent of the Light, which is like a Sedite anti-tribute.
Yeah.
For lack of a better way to put
Yeah.
it.
And
Similar, but
even
different.
more evil Sedite.
Yeah. The good guy, bad guys.
Yeah.
So basically they were kind of going back and forth, and they were like talking to everybody in the room, and I was kind of like, y'all can continue to talk, like I don't care, but like I've already made the statement, like you're like giving options for why you would be a good ductus, and I'm like, I'm the ductus. And so I made that statement, like, tell me what you would do with me that would put me in a better position than being a ductus. And so the Serpent of the Light is like, yeah, we'll talk later. And I was like, I want it now. You stand and deliver. And then he kind of didn't. And then you gave the break, and she took me aside. And so first and foremost, I was kind of like, I'm not even certain I'm going to go with her. But then I was like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to play along. Right? Because I was like, what does this game benefit, and what does my character benefit, and honestly, what does the growth of these other characters benefit by me just being like, the stick in the mud, like
I'm ductus,
right? I'm the badass, and I'm not, like.
Yeah,
that's the other thing. Like, I got to play to this concept, but I'm not,
no,
because I've seen the sheets in this game, and I ain't on that level. But I talk a good game. So, anyways, she basically told me. What you just stated, like, oh, you'd be good to pursue this and da 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 da, and you wouldn't be sort of like held down by this, that, and the other. And I kind of thought about it for a minute, and I was like, yeah, that's a really terrible argument because you don't know what my goals are. But then I was like, you show a passion for leadership. You show that you really want to be in this position, and I really don't. And so I did something that I think is probably like a 1 in 100 in game and in real life. I went, yeah, you're right. and I was like, I relent, I relinquish. Your argument is sound. You win.
Yeah.
Right. And that's the thing. Like, it almost never happens. And I think.
Did you think that her argument was actually sound? Or,
sure.
Or okay.
It was sound for a new player, right? And so and it was sound for someone who was very passionate about playing their character. And the argument, we could have pressed, right? I could have went back and forth, and like, I feel like, all ego aside, like, given the opportunity, I could have out-argued her.
Yeah, I mean,
but like,
you've also done this forever.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And so, like, I felt that what she came, like, this is something she wanted. Like, this is something she was passionate about and her character wanted. And so I was like, I want to help this game. I want to help this situation. I don't want to be ductus of someone that I had to browbeat sort of out of the position that they wanted in the first place. Because
your character didn't really want to be. Because, like, I feel like on the one hand, it's like you might have gone easy mode, but you weren't really, because you ended up getting what you wanted in the end anyway.
There's a pack, and I'm a member of it.
Yeah.
I went in not wanting anything. I went in sort of holding a position because I could, right? It's like, the possibility of authority is presented, and other people are like, you should run for this. And you're like, I should run for office, but I want to be a stand-up comedian. And so I'm just going to, like, not really, I'm not going to work too hard towards this.
Well, it's kind of funny because I don't know if it's necessarily a parallel or I guess an analog to game, but have you ever, like, noticed that, like, you meet someone in life who's a really genuine person, a really charming person, a really good leader, someone that has ideas that are sound and that you really respect, and in your mind maybe you're like, man, that person would be like, great president, or someone you really look up to, like maybe someone you worked with or a friend you had, or just someone you really respect, like, that's a good person, like, oh, like they would, something like that as president. But the thing is those types of people can never be in those positions, because they are so good. You know what I mean? Like, you kind of have to be a son of a bitch. And so it's like similar in game, it's like, everyone was telling like, oh, you be this great leader, you be blah, blah, blah. But because you were demonstrating authority and you were knowledgeable and you were doing things and you were passionate and you could lead a charge. But you're right, Corey would be a terrible Ductus because he'd get his whole pack killed.
Yeah.
Just for his principles.
Right, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't bat an eye at it. And that's the thing. Like, I was asked by another character later that night where they're like, she's inexperienced. She doesn't know anything. Like,
the character, not the player.
Right. The character. You're gonna like let her be leader, and I'm like, she has passion. I didn't let her do anything. I just stood aside. And like all leaders, like, it's not like, look at fucking George Bush Jr. Right? Like, here's a guy who, by all accounts, is a terrible leader, and like no one today is talking shit about him. Right? As a for instance, it's probably because of the people he had around him.
Right.
The people that were guiding him and giving him information and, like the days we long for.
Right.
Are today. Like, I don't want to get political.
Right.
I don't want to get real political, but I mean, like, I think we can all agree that, George Bush was not a great communicator.
Right.
But he did a lot of things that he wouldn't have been able to do
if he didn't have the people around him to help advise him.
And so
that's true of most presidents.
Right.
I mean, Barack Obama was a great communicator, but he still was surrounded with people that
you don't
you
know
have
those
advisors.
Individuals.
Is
Right.
what you're saying.
You don't see those individuals, and this game is a lot like that, right? Like, there's very few individuals that are going to go in and role play a concept in like a pack mentality, which the Sabbat is, where they're like, I'm in charge, do what the fuck I say. Right? Because the loyalty that is assumed is done through a fake ritual, right? So we don't actually feel that loyalty towards them. And, I've been in plenty of occasions where people will actively try to role play their way around feeling those like loyalties that are engendered through ritual.
Like the Volder, yeah.
Right. So it behooves people to still, like sort of lead through committee. And I don't have a problem with that because I feel like we're all like playing the same game and we're kind of all working towards the same goal, right? But you are in a different position because now you are there. So essentially, there's another position of authority that's open that like everybody's going to have to kind of kiss your ass, right?
If I'm bishop,
yeah, right. Yeah. If you get that position, and so.
So I guess the thing that I have to consider from my character's perspective, like as Rachel, I don't really want to do it because it's like it's more work and it's intimidating and it's hard mode, right? It's like taking it from medium to hard.
It is.
And part of me is like, I'm happy at medium. I can come to game. I can role play my way through medium. I kind of do what I want. I can be a little snarky. I can be a little like, I have a lot more freedom, right? Because I'm in authority, but I'm also, have the freedom and flexibility to not have the burden of responsibility.
Right. You speak from the authority of someone else.
Exactly. So from my perspective, it's very appealing, but from my character's perspective, like, yeah, she wants to be bishop just because of her path, but she wants to be bishop because it's a position of power. And so from my character's perspective, what I need to think about is that actually a position of power? Or, because that is very much like, in a lot of ways, that is the Queen Cersei place of leadership. And the Queen Cersei sort of source of power, where you are on the throne and everybody sees you.
Right.
And you think that, but maybe you're not privy to everything that's going on around you.
Right.
Where I am right now is a bit more like the Littlefinger source of position of power.
That's very true. That is,
and that I think is still an incredibly powerful position.
It is, but it is less powerful.
It's
right?
true
because while you do speak with the authority of the bishop you serve, you can't make a ruling.
Right.
With the authority of the bishop. If the bishop doesn't like what you've done, the bishop will.
It's a balance, right? Because it's like if you're in the position of the bishop, you have the authority to say yes or no to a lot of things. And so you have that power, but you also have all the responsibility of the outcomes of those decisions. When you're a Templar or when you're another person in the diocese, you may have the ability to influence those decisions. You may not be able to make the calls on those decisions, but having influence over decisions can be harder. It can be multi-stepped and multi-pronged, and it can be a lot more complicated. But you can kind of pull back in the shadows and be like, well, it wasn't under my authority that this decision was made.
Yeah.
So you can't be held accountable when things go bad. So it's a difference between the ease with which you can make dictate things versus, I don't know, I'm kind of rambling.
Well,
but you've seen
also, I think that the last game session was a valuable lesson from a character perspective because the other bishop was removed from their position, and so the position that you're in now, you can see like that could just be taken from you.
Yeah.
Right. The bishop was removed from their position because of a number of factors.
Right. And what you
not
mean
all of which were
like,
in-game.
Right. Like I'm a Templar. I'm
Right.
only a Templar because my bishop appointed me. If that bishop is no longer bishop,
if
then
that
I'm
bishop
nothing.
gets destroyed, right? Or if that bishop gets promoted, or that bishop moves on, or that bishop can't come to game anymore.
Exactly. So if I'm in a position of, my position of authority is really no position.
Right,
Yeah.
right. It is a temporary position at best, and what it gives you. So I would say, personally, how I would see your character attaining this position is probably through like careful manipulation, right?
Yeah.
You need to weigh your options, and you need to go, okay, what is the value of this position,
Right.
and who are the people that can help to get me there through their word. And what am I willing to owe them to get there, right? And so we talk about House of Cards.
Yeah.
Everything is about owing somebody. Like most people, I think that play this game, they think that the Sabbat is just like, let's go and fucking fight it out.
Yeah.
And that's not what it is.
Yeah, let's think. Not every LARP is the night in question
Right.
where you go to a mass embrace.
Right.
More
right.
often than not, it's like, let's consider our options carefully before we take action. Because as we learned 2 games ago, when you don't do that, you end up accidentally attacking a convoy of Giovanni retainers. So
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. Like, when you are in a diocese or you're like part of a city that your pack is like a coven, right? You're a permanent fixture of a city. It comes back down to politics.
Right.
Right? That's what it is. You're manipulating and maneuvering. You're doing it a little bit differently than your Camarilla counterparts would be, but it's essentially the same concept of favor, right? The rabble, the street level shovelhead thugs, they don't really matter. They're going to live and die quickly and violently. They're going to burn bright and burn out quick. But your character, a lot of the other characters, you're the more established. Like, you're the Sabbat ruling class, and so you have these packs that have a value. And basically, I would see it as much in the same way that you would take aside that young potential ductus and go, I here's how I would advise you to go forward. You sort of were able to exert yourself over her and kind of manipulate her to get her into a position of authority that you could gain from, right? So no matter what, that pack, my pack, the pack that I belong to, not the one that I'm not in charge of shit, but that pack is in your pocket. So those are votes for you. Those are backers of your play, right? And so now you have to talk to those other packs and see, like, what can you offer them? What would be timer? What would be of value to them to push for you?
Yeah.
So yeah, you definitely have like your hands, you have a hefty load in front of you.
Yeah.
But
I got a lot of conversations to have in the next 30 days.
yeah,
And
but
downtimes,
it's I mean, to me, it's an envious position to be in.
It's fun. I mean, it makes the game really fun. And
also, I'm a little jealous. Like, I've never been a bishop. Like, that wasn't an NPC character. So
Oh, really?
no. Like I said, most Sabbat games, like,
yeah.
they don't. They don't last as long as these seem to be lasting.
Well, we'll see how it turns out. Maybe I can hop onto a Nerd Words after next game and just, let people know what happened and if I made it. But Nate, thanks for letting me come on tonight. I really hope people enjoyed listening to us. I don't even know how long we talked or really what we talked about. I mean, I know what we talked about, but I feel like we just kind of talked.
Yeah.
So hopefully people found that interesting. But yeah.
So anyways, let's real quick before we wrap it up, because I got to go grab the laundry and I got to get ready for work. But real quick, this is the Indianapolis One World by Night Sabbat game. Mm-hmm. It's called Stars Never Rise. Mm-hmm. And it's our home game. The folks that run this game have been super welcoming to me. I as many of you listening may know, I never really played any OWbN games. I think I did one at Midwinter. And here's another thing you may not have known. Mm-hmm. Apparently, One World by Night doesn't have a game at Midwinter this year. They have a game going on at the same time, but I guess there's been some shift in the relationship between the convention and
I didn't know that, but yeah, I knew Midwinter was kind of branching off to be a separate thing. I just assumed, apparently incorrectly, that it was an OWbN convention. I don't know.
I thought it was.
Yeah, I don't know the history and politics of it.
Nor do I.
Yeah.
But anyways, apparently there is a game going on at the same time as Midwinter. And to be totally frank, I'm looking forward to going to Midwinter, but more, I'm looking forward to LARPing.
Yeah.
So I'm going to get the details of that game, and I'll mention it here on the podcast, so that people that are listening, can go to that game or whatever. But we will be at Midwinter.
Nate and Rachel,
right? Nate and Rachel,
maybe Bob if he's up to it. Yeah.
We're going to be at Midwinter, but also I'm going to make an effort to go to this LARP because...
Is that going to be in Milwaukee?
Yeah,
or Madison or whatever?
So apparently it's going to be
How bad is it that I'm 34 and I still get Milwaukee and Madison confused? What's wrong with me? I'm from the Midwest.
It's Wisconsin.
But isn't Milwaukee... Are they both in Wisconsin?
Yeah.
Oh, what the fuck is wrong? I'm so dumb. Anyway, continue. Continue.
You're not dumb. So anyways, we have One World by Night characters. We're going to make an effort to go to that game. So... and apparently it's within a half an hour drive. St. Paul?
Milwaukee's not Minnesota?
No.
I'm so fucking dumb.
Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
Oh, I'm so dumb. I'm sorry, everybody. I'm sorry Rachel's dumb. Please continue.
Yeah, it's not like a real important thing to know.
But it's it's kind of telling about me that I don't remember it. I also get I will never in my whole life be able to spell the word necessary, and I will always get confused about which is Labor Day and which is Memorial Day.
I don't think you're unique in that.
I don't know why I always think that Milwaukee is in Minnesota.
I don't think that there's there's no mnemonic, is that what they call it, where you
I don't know.
Use something for Labor Day, Memorial Day? I don't
Wow, I've really taken us too far away.
No, that's okay.
We were talking about conventions, Midwinter. Yeah. We're excited.
So we also, I haven't looked at them at all, but we got some character stuff for the night in question.
Oh my God, I'm so excited. Oh, okay, so real quick, I got to geek out about this hardcore. Okay, so just because of the nature of our tickets, I'm pretty sure Nate and I are both going to be playing Mortals. Uh-huh. I know I definitely
I didn't look at mine at all.
Okay, so I got this today. I saw the email. I was in a break at work, and I checked my email, and I saw I had an email for it was Christmas time. I'm not even joking you. I was so excited. So I opened my email. It's Jackalope LARP, you're gonna register, and I'm ah! And I start looking through it and doing it, and I'm before I know it, and I get to the end of character selection, and there's a screen, and it says, "Are you sure this is the character you want? Once you press this button, there's no going back." And I'm yeah, and I pressed the button, and it was just so satisfying. So I am so excited. I cannot wait. We've got so much fun stuff going on in the next couple months, but I'm so excited for this. The night in question, I'm pumped.
Yeah, I'm geeking. I like to keep it very even keel about most things, but I get to go on my first airplane. And we get to go to the Austin area.
Yeah, I've never been to Austin, Texas.
So I'm super looking forward to that. Mm-hmm. But like, you know, we've had Matt Webb, we've had the Jackalope folks on the Vampire podcast twice.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's like going and visiting friends and like, you know, just talking
and there's
to more
a bunch of people that we didn't know this, but there's a lot of people from Indianapolis
so, like,
going.
our Indy crew, like my adopted Indy LARP crew that run the Stars Never Rise, like they're all going. So, like, I'm super geeked because, like, I'll actually know people.
Right.
You know? So, I'm so excited about it. So, anyways, we'll give you some more information next podcast or whenever we remember to do it. But midwinter, you guys should come out at least to hang out with us. The night in question, like, if you can get tickets for it, you should. If you can get the time off in November to do this, like, it's gonna be huge. It's gonna be awesome. We're super geeked for it.
Yeah, we're probably also going to be filming a lot of. You know, just like we'll do a vlog about our experience that Nate will put up on the Utility Muffin Labs website. We're also currently working on maybe a vlog for our Playing Hooky podcast. It'll be up soon. We don't know. Like, we did a dry run, and the footage that we took, like, I don't know. Like, I was thinking about it the other day, and I'm like, we kind of screwed up with the camera a couple places.
We did, and that's okay because it was both of us.
Yeah.
Like I'm used to using a camera now that I'm like, I'm used to using a camera, but I've never really filmed video with a phone.
No, and that's all we had to go with because we're not. Here's the thing, folks. We're not wealthy people. We're just entertaining by some people's in some people's opinion.
The stuff that you're listening to us on right now, some of you paid for.
Yeah, this is that's another good point. Is that, you know, the reason why Nate and Bob can do these podcasts for you guys and continue to improve the quality, even though occasionally the coffee maker goes off, even though occasionally you hear an alarm.
Those are cute, right?
Yeah, those are little quirks. You know, yeah. It is because they have such great Patreon supporters. And so, you know, I in the early days, I was a supporter on Patreon. Now that we are cohabitating, it makes a little less sense because now you're paying taxes on that money twice, essentially. So, but yeah, so I can honestly say, like, you know, the majority of the Patreon money that you guys support Utility Muffin Labs with really does get reinvested into the podcast to create better quality entertainment for you all. You know, the Patreon subscribers know that Nate and Bob do bi-weekly extra podcasts as rewards. Yeah. So, big thank you to that, because it's like I've been able to see it grow over the past year that he and I have been friends, and it's just really amazing, like, the support that you guys give. So I know they appreciate it, and I appreciate it because as another listener, I get to benefit from everything that you guys do. So if you can support the podcast and you want to, you know, please do. And if you can't financially support the podcast, then, you know, share on social media, write reviews on iTunes. Like, there's tons of ways you can support.
That's really the truth of the matter is, like, you know, obviously all the money that, you know, I hate to even talk about this stuff, but, like, all the money that this generates, it's all fan related, right? We don't have any ads. You know, we do 3, sometimes 4 podcasts, and we don't get any ad revenue. So it's like, it's all internal. But
if we did get ad revenue, that would be awesome.
Right, that'd be awesome. But I don't, you know, I don't care about that. Like, share it with people. You know, if you like what we do, share it on Facebook, share it on Twitter, talk about it. If you come to the LARP that we play in and you listen to it, come up and let me know. I'll give you a sticker. You know, that's we do this because we're passionate about the stuff that we talk about, but we do it because we're passionate with you, you know, and that's all I can say. If you like it, share it. That's it. That's how this stuff works.
Right.
So, anyways, enough of that crap.
Sorry.
No, it's totally cool. Come play with us.
At the night, Indy? Yeah, in Indy. At
Stars Never Rise?
Yep. Oh, we're going to the Polygon game. At least I'm going.
I will not be going because I have to work.
Right.
Weekends.
Well, I will be going to the Polygon game. In Ohio. In October. So we'll be playing again in Indy in October. Then I will be 13th. I will be traveling with the Indianapolis crew to Polygon in Ohio. I believe on the 26th.
I'm gonna look right now.
It's like the last Saturday.
So I was gonna try to get one of those weekend days off, but the problem is we're going to see Ghost on the 30th.
Yeah.
And I was like,
Yo, man, our lives are just so... Wow, we just have too much cool stuff going on.
It's just like, we're just so busy.
It's like we've got...
So the Friday, Saturday, Sunday, the Polyground in Ohio.
Yeah,
so.
and then Night in Question, and then Midwinter, and then after that, the world's our oyster.
Who knows, yeah.
So...
Yeah, it's all wrapped up from there. Anyways, thank you guys for listening. It has been a pleasure. I am Nathan.
And thank you very much for inviting me on. I am Rachel.
You're welcome, Rachel. Anytime. Anyways, thanks, folks, and we'll talk to you again very soon.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Hey, folks, this is Nathan from utilitymuffinlabs.com. If you enjoyed the Nerd Words podcast, think about supporting us. For more podcasts, art, videos, and gaming, go to utilitymuffinlabs.com. Follow our podcast on Twitter at UtilityMuffins, on Instagram and Facebook under our Utility Muffin Labs name, and support us on YouTube at Utility Muffin Labs. Check out our other gaming-related podcasts, 25 Years of Vampire the Masquerade, and check out our Playing Hooky podcast coming soon. Thank you all for your support. Utility Muffin Labs, consistently rated adequate.